Hello, today we're talking about automation and quick controls, basically how to plug Cubase into Halion to make best use of it with our knobs and sliders on our keyboards. Got the completely standard default preset and we're going to throw Hexagon away and we're going to build a program from scratch and we're going to add a layer to it and then we're going to add a zone to the layer. We'll get really used to doing that. Okay, automation first. Out of the box, there's not that much you can do inside Cubase to affect Halion. If I open automation up, we get 512 very boring and empty automation slots. We also get these 64 slots, and that is what you get for free. It's not much. Really basic stuff at the slot level, muting the entire slot, soloing the entire slot, access to the basic quick controls. These are program level quick controls, and we'll see later that that's a little bit quirky. That's repeated for each of the 64 slots, but other than that, we've not got much. Very often when you load VSTs up, you get 1,000,001 different pre-configured automation lanes, and that's not the way that Halion works. You have to tell it what to automate, which is great because you don't get overwhelmed with the vast quantity of different automation values you can have. You've got 512 slots, you can fill them however you want. So let's have a look at how that gets done. So here is a filter, and we have a cutoff and resonance and completely standard stuff. Just going to turn the oscillator into a source so that when we filter it, we'll get interesting harmonic sounds. But again, don't worry about that for now. That's not where we're at. So now, classic filter with resonance. Completely standard stuff. Right click and assign to new automation. This is what we want. So those 512 automation slots that we saw earlier, all empty, not doing anything, we're going to fill one of them. And we just did. And you see over here in the quick controls panel, I'll just make this a bit smaller. Over here in the quick controls panel, it's automatically assigned it to one of our track controls. You can see program 1.filter.cutoff, which is this thing here. And look at that. Nice. You can't do it the other way until you've actually enabled that control for automation. So the resonance knob over here, if we put the quick control panel in learn mode and moved our resonance knob, Cubase doesn't hear it. If we move the cutoff knob, it does. Cutoff has been activated for automation. And in our automation list, entry number 1 of 512 has been populated. So that is very standard automation fare. Many VSTs have pre-wired, you don't have to enable automation in that way, so Halion is a little bit more complex, but there are more than 512 automatable parameters. So they said, right, well, you decide which ones you want, we won't give you any out of the box. And that's fine, I agree, good choice. Now then, each automation lane, if you like, can control more than one parameter at a time. So let's activate resonance as well. But instead of assigning to new automation, we're going to add to this existing automation. So this is, remember, slot 1 of 512. We've now made that slot control 2 different parameters, and there they both are. And you can see because I wired it into channel 2 as well, into quick control number 2, it's operating them both. Take that one away. Let's create a second, and this time we'll use the amplifier. Again, I'm using components that you should be reasonably familiar with so that they're not intimidating in their own right. So here we have the amplifier's velocity, and we're going to add this to a new automation channel. So this is going to be automation number 2. When we look in our automation lane. There they are. So now we'll make a quick control number 2. Automation channel number 2. You can do it the other way. You could have it learn. So if I get rid of that, put it in learn mode, click this, twiddle the knob, and because Halion knows that that control has been activated for automation, it plugs it into the quick control, turn it off again. So now we've got two of the 512 automation lanes populated. One of them's got 2 things, one of them's got 1 thing. Do we remember which is which? Well, we don't need to. Wherever your automation tab happens to be, go and find it. By default, it's here in the Auto CC. So here's our Auto tab. Here's our MIDI CC tab. And this is a perfect example of one tab containing multiple sub-tabs. And automation and MIDI continuous controllers are kind of philosophically linked, so it makes total sense to have them collected together like this. And here we see all of our automation parameters. Here's automation number 1. And this is just free text, by the way. We can call that auto 1, and when we do, it renames it down here. Let's call that Bob, and there's Bob down here. When we fiddle with Bob, program 1 amplifier envelope velocity is still being affected. There we are, down at our minimum. There it is, down at the minimum. Everything is still wired together. If we decide we don't want the filter resonance on this automation lane, get rid of it. And now automation lane 1 is just controlling the filter cutoff again. So that's all really straightforward. That's how to use automation. You don't need any more than that to get up and running. That's pretty straightforward standard stuff. Rather than managing the automation from the automation management console, you could do it from the right click, forget automation, and now it's gone. And now this defaults back to the name of the automation lane that Halion assigns. Remember when we saw automation 1 all the way down to 512? So that's its default name. Nothing's assigned to it anymore. So, you know, this isn't doing anything. And there we just see Bob. So we'll give this a new automation, and then let's have a look where it's put it. It's put it in the available slot. Slot 1 was available, so it's added it back in. Auto 1. If we want to see that in Cubase, show Auto 1 automation track, and over here, there it is. And now we could write automation data into that track from inside Cubase. Okay, that's automation, so let's have a look at quick controls. So as things stand at the moment, automation lane 1 is assigned to the filter cutoff. Let's create a new zone. Turn this filter on. And this time we'll engage resonance, and we'll add that to automation 1. Quick check, there they are. Program 1 filter cutoff, zone 2 filter resonance. A quick note about this program 1 filter cutoff. When we assigned this automation, we were operating at the layer level, and so every single zone by default that we create, I create a third one and go and edit that that zone, and then fiddle with this quick control. They all map to that cutoff value because the automation is operating at the program level. Whereas when I created zone 2 and had it selected, when I assigned that automation, that went down to the zone level. So there's a hierarchy here. All 3 zones, the filter cutoff is responding to my slider, and zone 2's resonance is also responding to the slider. Now then, This resonance, we don't want it to be an absolute value. We don't want it to track with the cutoff exactly. We want to set the resonance, and then when we modulate this quick control, we want it to operate relative to wherever the resonance knob is actually set. We can do that, but not using automation. This is where quick controls come in. They have an additional level of flexibility in that you can assign relative values to parameters rather than absolute values. So what we're going to do is we're going to disconnect this resonance knob from the automation channel. We're going to stop using automation to control it, and now we've just got the filter cutoff operating on the automation lane. And instead, we're going to assign it to a quick control. And remember what I just said earlier, quick controls can operate at the program level or the layer level, and we want to assign it at the layer level. So now this resonance is being controlled by this slider down here. But you may think it's not moving. Why is it not moving? Well, if I turn this all the way down and I hover over it, see it says 0, QC1 filter resonance, turn it all the way up, 100. It's a relative value. We can tell that by right clicking, having a look at the type, and by default quick controls are assigned as relative values. When you have a relative association with a control, you move the quick control but the knob itself doesn't move, because that's the center point around which the relative modulation is going to be applied. So Steinberg deliberately detached that visual aid because it no longer makes any sense. Where the knob is not its current value, that's its center point around which the relative changes are made. So when you hover over it, they give you a tooltip display of what the current value actually is. Now then, we've got this quick control operating on the filter resonance, but it doesn't have to just do that. Let's assign it to this distortion as well. So assign quick control layer 1 QC1. So now this quick control, see that says 38, that says 0. Move it up a bit. That now says 61, this says 37. So both of those controls have been modulated relatively according to where this knob is. Now the minimum and maximum ranges when you're dealing in relative parameters suddenly become absolutely critical, and they are controlled by clicking on the layer or program that you're concerned with and going into the sound tab. I'm sorry this is complicated, there's just lots of places to remember where to look, it's just the way it is. So in the sound tab at the layer and program level we get quick control assignments, and here you can see QC1, here's its name, and we're going to call it multi-filter doodah. Okay, so that's the multi-filter doodah, and it's operating on the filter resonance and the filter distortion, and here we see our minimum and maximum values. We can change them, we can double click on them and type in explicitly. We can pick up these little arrows and drag them to set the minimums and maximums. We can click on the line and make curves. So quick controls are much more powerful than automation. So that's the curvature, and you can again set that if we go to 70, steeper curve. You can make one of the controls relative and one of them absolute. And now if we go over back to our zone where we were editing our filters, when I turn this dial, one of the knobs is going to move. because now resonance is an absolute value. You see it was red when we came in. It's because we switched from relative to absolute mode, and there's been a disconnect between those two values. What the quick control value was setting the resonance at and what the knob was actually set to were now out of sync because we've decoupled them, and it's saying, oh, have a look at this. This value isn't representing what's actually going on. And as soon as we move it, it catches up and everyone's happy again. So the filter cutoff isn't moving because that's still a relative control. Coming back over to our sound tab so that we can see our quick control assignments page. We have some other functionality. We can bypass quick controls from here. We can mute the entire quick controls functionality from here. And this is where we enable or disable quick control listening capability on a layer by layer basis. So if we turn that off, then this layer won't hear any quick control values regardless of what's set. We've just done all this work to set up our multi-filter doodah, and we have all of this control over these filter values. So how do we get this to the outside world? We want to control this knob from inside Cubase. Well, go into learn mode, click QC3. Nothing's happened. So at the layer level, there's no automatic mapping of quick controls to the outside world. The only auto mapping that there is at the program level. So Cubase can't see this knob, but we can make it see this knob by adding it to one of our 512 automation slots. So this is a bit of a head twist. We've used the quick control functionality, which contains the ability to control parameters relatively and with curvature graphs. So we've got all of that extra flexibility by using quick controls, but Cubase can't see internal quick controls, layer-based quick controls. But if we assign the quick control to an automation lane, suddenly it can. So now this multi-filter doodah quick control is assigned to automation lane number 3. There it is. Okay. Now in Cubase, this is just one of the many automation lanes that are available to us. And so now when we move this, our quick control to updates, and in turn that then maps to whatever that quick control is plugged into, and we find that with our edit sound here. All I can recommend that you do is play with it for a couple of hours. I personally keep myself to automation. I can think of a couple of occasions when I've dipped into quick controls because I did want a bit of relative control from the front end. But to be absolutely honest with you, at that fine level, I don't play my keyboard as a performance instrument, but if you do and you want this kind of stuff and you want to be able to control parameters maybe with a plus or minus 10% relative to their standard position, then quick controls with their relative capabilities will be fantastic. And in that case, you are going to want to be able to automate them to get them into Cubase up at the top of the tree. But don't be confused when you see these things here, because they are only quick controls at the top level program. That value there will not see this knob because this is a layer based knob. This operates inside this layer. Just as a very quick illustration, if I select program, so I've selected the very top node of the tree here, gone to zone, assigned this to a quick control, program 1, QC1. Now, if I select program 1, QC1, filter.cutoff, there it is. So at the program level, if you set a setting that operates on everything under that hierarchy, then you can access it like from a very simple perspective. And there's our slider. This is another reason why quick controls are a little bit kind of head mashy, because once I click layer, this changes back to my multi-filter doodah, and now it's this QC over here that's operating that knob. And that's it for automation and quick controls. Hope you found that useful. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you for the next video.